Ocean Casino in Atlantic City from the Gallery Bar. Booking games. I'm Mark Farzetta for the Malamut pregame show ahead of the Eagles and Kansas City Chiefs, both returning from their bye week and what most people are billing in the obvious, which is a Super Bowl rematch. Me, myself, and I know a lot of Eagles fans in our panel as well, we are more concerned about the Super Bowl preview. Moving on from Super Bowl 57 to Super Bowl 58. The best team, the number one seed in the NFC, taking on the number one seed in the AFC, with the Eagles battling the Chiefs today at Arrowhead Stadium. Congratulations, we're all getting pumped for Monday Night Football. Let's bring in our panelists today. Of course, we have Eagles Hall of Famer Mr. Seth Joyner here on the program, and we have Bill Colarulo as well. Derek Gunn, our friend, will be joining us on the post-game show for a segment. He's still dealing with a personal issue, and our prayers are still with Gunner and his family. Seth, Bill, we're looking at this game tonight, of course, with that Super Bowl rematch that a lot of people are talking about. And I have to say, I love one of the things that have come out of this week from head coach Nick Sirianni, saying you can't win the ring on Monday night. How much does that factor into this game when it comes to a player's mindset, Seth?
Well, listen, it's tough to say. There is a psychological side of this game. This isn't a must-win for this football team, but from a psychological standpoint, it's a must-win. They haven't beaten Andy Reid. They've lost to this team, the last two times they played them. From a psychological standpoint, this is a game that they need. And I think that it would bode well for them going into this stretch of games that they have going on. I agree with Nick. Listen, you're not going to win the Super Bowl tonight, but psychologically it can take you to higher heights if you can win this game tonight, if you can beat this team that you've struggled against, if you can come out and prove that this team is not invincible, that Patrick Mahomes isn't invincible. For me, it's really going to be a game of chess tonight. The chess match, I'm not so worried about the players as much as I am worried about how the coaches are going to react. Because let's just be honest, Andy Reid and his staff, they basically took Eric Bieniemy and Steve Spagnuolo. They took Nick Sirianni and his staff to the woodshed in the second half last year. So the question is, you had an extra week, you got some guys healthy. What did you learn from your experience last year in the Super Bowl playing this team, and what adjustments can you make against the adjustments that you're going to see? Because it is going to be a tale of two halves. There's going to be a game plan that Andy Reid and his staff has in place for the first half, but when the rubber really meets the road and it's time to find out who's going to win this game and who's going to lose it, there's going to be some adjustments made in the second half, and then we're going to see how much growth not only this football team but this coaching staff has matured over the last 7-8 months.
You mentioned Patrick Mahomes and Bill watching this Kansas City Chiefs team throughout the season. Of course, they lose. Their only loss at home this season was Week 1 against the Detroit Lions, who obviously look like a force to be reckoned with now in the NFC. The Eagles are going to have to watch out for down the line maybe. But when you look at that offense, they're averaging a touchdown less per game this season. What are you seeing that is different, especially with Eric Bieniemy no longer being their offensive coordinator? What are you seeing different with that offense that maybe the Eagles hadn't seen last year in the Super Bowl?
They don't have the playmakers at the wide receiver position that they've had in previous seasons. And if you look at what they're doing, they're still number 5 in the NFL in passing yards, but they're doing it throwing balls very close to the line of scrimmage. Even though they're number 5 in passing yards, they're number 29 in yards before catch, meaning Patrick Mahomes is not throwing the ball very far down the field. But where they're number 1 is yards after catch. They have over 1,400 yards after catch. You hear about Yak all the time. The Chiefs do it better than anybody. So the Eagles really need to make sure they tackle well tonight because they don't have the speed to beat you deep. And we say it every week when we're watching these games, Seth especially, get up to the line of scrimmage. Challenge these receivers. Well, if you're not going to do it tonight, I don't know when you're going to do it because they don't have the playmakers to beat you over the top. They're going to try to throw short, quick passes to hit these guys in space. Get up to the line. Don't give them clean releases, especially Travis Kelce.
Seth, we were talking earlier, Bill and I, on Birds 365, filling in for John McMullen, who'll be joining us from Arrowhead Stadium coming up in a little bit here on the Malamut pregame show. But will tonight, possibly, could it be, we actually see defensive backs of the Philadelphia Eagles, Sean Desai, having him at the line of scrimmage to help defend against the situation that Bill just laid out?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do, with who's active tonight. If they get Bradley Roby back, if the two safeties who now have had 2 more weeks to heal up for one and 2 more weeks for another guy to kind of get up to speed with what's going on with this defense, and rest for your 2 cornerbacks, who really haven't looked spectacular all season long. It all depends, because for a defensive coordinator, it's really about, do you trust the guys that are on the field enough to call your full repertoire of defenses that allows you to show Patrick Mahomes and Brian Nagy all of these different things that you can do? Or do you have to keep it simplified because you're not sure whether the young guys are going to make the mistakes or not? With the full repertoire, I look for these guys, to make the improvement. Listen, they rank against the pass 29th in the National Football League, giving up 257 yards per game. That is their Achilles heel right now. So you can either sit back against the greatest quarterback, of this era and allow him to pick you apart bit by bit and move down the field every single possession, or you can get up and you can challenge wide receivers at the line of scrimmage. You can offset, the timing routes by being able to jam guys and disrupt routes, and you can take guys away by being physical with them at the snap of the ball. Or you can sit back and allow the obvious to happen, because he's smart enough to pre-snap, know what you're in, to make the right adjustments, and to go to the right place with the ball. Now, the only advantage that a defense has against a quarterback like this is to be physical with the wide receivers, to throw the timing off, make him come off his first route right now, go to the second. That's going to give the rush time to get to Patrick Mahomes in a way that they couldn't because of the field. Yeah, I said it, because of the field in the Super Bowl.
Okay, so all right, now it might be a little drizzly tonight. I've been talking about the same thing all week. I talk about Hassan Reddick. I talk about Josh Sweat. I talk about them being able to get that angle to get into the backfield. When you look at the interior defensive line, a guy like Chris Jones of the Kansas City Chiefs, he's not going to be as impacted when it comes to rushing the passer because he's just pushing straight ahead. How much will the field conditions tonight then, Seth, and you kind of answered this already, but to expound upon it a little bit further, how much will it help the Eagles tonight maybe playing on a better field if the weather plays along?
Massively. Because the Eagles, this team, they're built defensively on their defensive line. Their ability to stop the run, which they're better at this year, I would say, because of the 2 young guys that's in the middle that really want to play the run, opposed to some guys that were in the middle last year that only wanted to rush the pass. I won't say any names, Javon Hargrave.
I was going to say if you weren't. All right.
And the 2 guys on the outside, when neither one of them could really turn the corner last year, because every single time they tried to dip or try to lean, they were slipping and falling. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, in that game, both teams had to play on the same field. But the strength of the Kansas City Chiefs is not their pass rush. The strength is their linebackers and Chris Jones, not guys coming off the edge. For the Eagles, it was the opposite. Going against a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, pressure is paramount. Being able to get to him, move him off his spot, keep him in the pocket, make him make the second read. That's the only way that they can beat a quarterback like this. And because of the field conditions last year, it took the strength of the Eagles' defense away from them in that game and made them an ordinary defense, specifically in the second half when they began to attack their weakness, which was stopping the run.
Mm-hmm. So it was just part of the script then. Wet down that field a little bit in the Super Bowl, have the bad grass. It was in the NFL script, unfortunately.
But I tell you what, the rain is supposed to stop before the game tonight. That field should have been covered all day, so we don't have any slippage issues. So I'm looking for the Eagles pass rush to show up and show out tonight in a major way and have the effect on this football game that it could not last year because of the field conditions.
Bill, I know you know the numbers, but when you talk about a guy like Hassan Reddick with a cast on, 0 sacks, cast off his hand, he is getting after the quarterback at an alarming rate, 7.5 sacks now, just absolutely a dominant player like we have seen him be last year and really throughout the last 3 years of his career. How much will Hassan Reddick play a role in the Eagles winning or losing tonight's game?
I think the entire defensive line is going to play a big role. Not only Hassan Reddick, you have Josh Sweat, but also the interior, because if you can create interior pressure on Patrick Mahomes, that can go a long way. You look at this Chiefs offensive line, they're not that great, especially on the outside, but yet Mahomes has been sacked less than anyone in the NFL. They've only given up 12 sacks. That's mainly because of Patrick Mahomes. He's so good at maneuvering inside the pocket. So how do you combat that? Create interior pressure. Get in his face up the middle. It makes it very difficult for him to be able to step up in the pocket. Then you have Sweat and Reddick coming on the outside. That's what I think the key to this game is going to be. Can Jalen Carter, Fletcher Cox, Milton Williams, and Jordan Davis beat the interior of this Kansas City Chiefs offensive line? And if they can, it's going to be a long day for Patrick Mahomes.
I certainly hope so, and you're going to need that Eagles offensive line, or defensive line, to be able to eat up when it comes to taking on that offensive line of the Kansas City Chiefs. And if we know anything about the Andy Reid years here in Philadelphia, we all know how much it was predicated on making sure that you were building in the trenches. And every single time you hear Howie Roseman speak after a draft, he speaks about the overall philosophy. That overall philosophy, though many people just might know it as good football, Eagles fans know it as an Andy Reid philosophy. Make sure you're taking care of the guys on the offense and defensive line, because the games are won and lost in those trenches. Who has the advantage tonight when it comes to two teams that, again, are on a great pace for sacks this season? 31 so far by the Chiefs this season, Seth, 30 by the Eagles to this point. Which defensive line do you think has more of the advantage in tonight's matchup?
Well, I think the Eagles have the advantage from a defensive and offensive line standpoint. I still believe that the Eagles have the number one offensive line in the National Football League. And when you look at the new young guys and the way that Fletcher's been playing and the way that the guys on the outside have been playing, I give the edge, to the Philadelphia Eagles. But they do it differently. On the defensive side of the ball, Steve Spagnuolo knows that he's got a defensive tackle that can dominate and change the game. He's got a guy in George Karlaftis who all of a sudden has come of age, and now is playing at a very high level. I don't worry about Karlaftis against our two offensive tackles. I really don't. What I worry is Chris Jones in the middle and his ability to disrupt the run game and get after the passer from that position. And then Steve Spagnuolo also knows that he doesn't have superior pass rushers on the outside. They got one guy that really dominates from a pass rush standpoint. So what does he do? In situations, he will come after you with exotic blitzes that you don't know where they're coming from. They'll show it from one side, those guys will drop out, and they'll come from another side. Or he'll bring more than you can block and leave it up to the quarterback to make the right decision. So he's not going to just sit back and zone and allow Jalen Hurts to pick him apart, especially if they can get the Eagles behind the chains on first and second down and create third and longs. He's old school. He is going to bring the pressure, and he's going to make you make quick decisions. On the offensive side of the ball, they rely on Patrick Mahomes to just make magic. The two tackles are new tackles. These aren't the same two tackles that started for them in the Super Bowl last year. So a lot of what Patrick is able to do is to manipulate the pocket and move around and get out of the pocket. The Eagles are going to have to be disciplined in their pass rush tonight in order to keep him in the pocket. And most people would say, oh my gosh, how do you say that Patrick Mahomes is more dangerous from outside the pocket than he is? But he is, because in man coverage, he's going to scramble for first downs. He can get that done. In zone coverage, he's going to move around just enough for his receivers to adjust. The deep guys are going to come back. The shallow guys are going to take off and go deep. And he's looking for the home run when he's out of the pocket and he's on the move. They have to keep him in the pocket. They have to make him play the game from the pocket tonight, because the majority of his big plays, they come when he's on the move.
Certainly, and you also talk about a guy this year in Patrick Mahomes that's running the football more than he ever has in his entire career, and that's a product of that, obviously. And he has to at this point.
The offensive line really isn't that good, and I think that shows why, they're ranked 5th in total offense. That shows why, they are 8th against the run. They rank 8th in rushing the ball, and 10th. A Patrick Mahomes run offense ranks 10th in passing in the National Football League. I don't think anybody would ever believe that number would be where it is right now. And I would submit to you, a lot of that has to do with the fact that the offensive line is not as good as it's been in the past, and he's having to make things happen more so this year than he ever has.
I believe it's Jordan Mailata leading the Eagles right now, unfortunately, in sacks allowed by an offensive lineman with 6.5. Nobody else on the Eagles' offensive line has allowed more than 3. Flip that on the other side of things for the Kansas City Chiefs. No one on their entire offensive line has allowed more than 3 sacks on that KC line. I don't think that's a brag for their offensive line. I think that's a brag that Patrick Mahomes is that good at making the right decision and making sure he gets out of the pocket, throws the ball away, or scrambles for more yards. So, Bill, let me ask you the same question now. When it comes to grading the offensive defensive line, who has the advantage here when it comes to the trench battle that's going to be going on tonight?
I agree with Seth. I think it's definitely the Philadelphia Eagles on both sides of the ball. Eagles are getting Cam Jurgens back tonight, makes their offensive line even better than what it was. But you look at the defensive line, outside of Chris Jones on the Chiefs' defensive line, I know Karlaftis, I don't even know how to say his name. Karlaftis has been playing a lot better this season. But you look at the Eagles' defensive line, I mean, they are just stacked. Fletcher Cox has turned back the clock. He's playing great. You mentioned since Reddick got that cast off, he looks like a different player. Josh Sweat looks good. You know, I think that it's definitely the Eagles' offensive and defensive line, but Patrick Mahomes is the X factor. So that's what it's all going to come down to. Seth hit it right on the head is they got to stay disciplined. The defensive line has to stay disciplined. We can't see Reddick and Sweat, as much as we want to see them get after the quarterback, crashing inside, losing contain, and letting Mahomes get outside the pocket because he'll kill you every time.
I stand corrected. The Chiefs ranked 4th against in passing offense. They ranked 4th, but that number is still pretty paltry. 264 yards a game for the best quarterback in the National Football League? No,
I'm with you. I agree wholeheartedly. We've been talking about the trenches here. I want to keep it there for a minute here. Cam Jurgens coming back. Now, defensively, we're expecting Bradley Roby to be in this game. Offensively, we're expecting Cam Jurgens to be back at the right guard position to be starting for the Eagles tonight. Since Cam Jurgens has been out, that running game has all but disappeared. Getting him back, but obviously losing Dallas Goedert for his run-blocking ability is a big blow to the Philadelphia Eagles. When it comes to Cam Jurgens being back, what is the realistic expectation, Bill, when it comes to Jurgens coming back in order to help that run game? Will we see DeAndre Swift going out there and being the guy that we saw climb in 2 weeks to be one of the NFL's leading rushers, and then all of a sudden that going by the wayside? What is the impact of Cam Jurgens returning to that offensive line tonight?
I hope it's a big impact because you look at this Chiefs defense, they've been really good against the pass. They haven't been as good against the run. 17th, giving up 112 yards a game. But I think what's even more telling is they're 26th in the NFL, giving up 4.5 yards per carry. And what I like to do is I like to go and look at the games that they lost. So this Chiefs team is 7-2. In their 7 wins, the opposing teams have run the ball on average 17 times with their running backs. In their 2 wins, or excuse me, the other team's 2 wins, their 2 losses, the opposing teams have ran the ball over 30 times on average with their running backs. You just look at what the Broncos did. Broncos lose the game, giving their running backs only 19 carries. They bounce back 2 weeks later. They give the running backs 32 carries in that game and win the football game. We talk about how good Patrick Mahomes is. Well, the best defense is to keep him on the sidelines. I'd love to see this Eagles team really commit to the run. I know we've said it in previous weeks, and they don't listen. But you look at it, you have Jurgens back. You're going against a defense that struggled against the run. There is no excuse not to run the football tonight. And not only are the Chiefs good against the pass in terms of giving up yards, you mentioned it earlier, they have 31 sacks this season. So if you want to take away what a defense is good at, let's run the football. Let's commit to the run with our running backs tonight, and let's hope you see Cam Jurgens have a real impact on that yards per carry because it has dropped.
One thing to add to that as well is you go back to that Denver Broncos game, and there was similar weather conditions. It was damp, it was snowy, it was cold. I don't know so much about the snowfall tonight in Kansas City, but I know it's going to be damp and I know it's going to be cold. About 30 degrees is what we're looking at now by the time maybe the second half rolls around. So similar weather conditions that the Kansas City Chiefs did not have a lot of success in either offensively or defensively against the Denver Broncos. What do you need to see, Seth, tonight going up against Kansas City Chiefs versus what you saw in that Super Bowl to now? What's one thing you think the Eagles really have to do tonight? I've been waiting all day to ask you this question because there's a couple of things you could throw out here. It could come to pressure. It could come to pressure at the line of scrimmage. It could come to pressure on the outside by your cornerbacks, obviously running the football. One thing you need to see tonight for the Eagles to walk away with and go, that's how they won the football game.
on the defensive side of the ball, I need to see Sean Desai have a plan for Travis Kelce. You cannot have him just running through the middle of the field, running through your defense, one-on-one, just dominating this football game, doing the shimmy shake and all that kind of nonsense. You got to get him under control, and you got to get Pacheco under control. And the Eagles have, they seem to have gotten that under control this year. They're only giving up 66 yards per game. They're first in the National Football League against the run. But Kelce, to me, is the wild card because I don't think he really has a defined route, on any play. Everything is an adjustment based upon how the defense is playing him. On the offensive side of the ball, we talk about it all the time. Bill just talked about, running the football. They do not seem like a coaching staff that really wants to run the football. They really want to pass the ball because, they want to live off of the big plays, the 20-plus yard passes down the field. But there's nothing wrong with shortening this game by running the football, dominating the line of scrimmage, forcing the Kansas City Chiefs to put 7-8 guys in the box and then attacking outside with max protection. There's nothing wrong with that. Whether Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson will employ this type of game plan is yet to be seen because we've been screaming from the ceilings ever since week 3 and week 4 where they dominated the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense and the Washington Commanders defense by running the ball 40-plus times. They've gotten away from it. They have totally gotten away from it. And I think that if they live in that world where they don't complete passes on first and second down and they get themselves in third and long situations, some of the defensive problems or some of the offensive problems, I should say, that you saw the Eagles have early in the year could resurface again because Steve Spagnuolo is just that good. He is a master at crafting up different ways and giving you exotic looks and really confusing not only your quarterback but your offensive coordinator too.
All right, now when it comes to running the football, we saw them earlier in this season, as you pointed out, Seth, be able to hit that gear with DeAndre Swift, be able to really gain yards on the ground with DeAndre Swift. To a point, Kenny Gainwell as well. We've seen Jalen Hurts throughout his career be able to gain yards on the ground. It almost seemed like an in case of emergency break glass type of scenario for the Eagles offense where if it wasn't working in the pass game, we'll just gain 150 yards on the ground without even blinking and have a problem. They have gotten away from that since Cam Jurgens got injured. Now him being back, as we talked about earlier, should have a good and positive impact on the Eagles' run game. But can it still be as good as we saw in the early portions of the year?
Can I ask you guys a question? Do you really – are we just looking at statistically the fact that Cam is out and since he's been out they haven't been able to run the ball? Or are we looking for a reason why they don't run the ball? See, because I'm someone who believes that in order to establish the run game, you have to commit to the run game. Whether you're being successful with it or you're not being successful with it. And there were times when Cam was healthy where they struggled the first couple of times that they ran the ball, but they stayed committed to trying to get it established. I'm not so sure that he is the sole reason why. Everyone wants to make that the reason why. I'm not so sure that that's the sole reason why they haven't been able to run the ball. I'm one who believes that this team wants to throw the football, and they've shown more of a commitment to putting the ball in the air than they have to actually running the ball, whether they've had success with it or whether they haven't, ever since Cam Jurgens got hurt.
I'll answer your question, and I'm half kidding when I say this. It's because we're delusional. It's because we're in denial, Seth. We want them to be able to commit to the run. We want to see – because, look, when we see them run the football, we see them have great success.
Absolutely.
When they commit, to use your word, when they commit to the run with this offensive line and the talented backfield that they have, we see them have success. So when we're in denial, when we're experiencing a little bit of disillusion – we're looking at, maybe it's because Cam Jurgens isn't there that they're not running the football. Maybe because Sui Opeta is somehow magically a better pass blocker than he is a run blocker. I don't agree with that. Maybe Tyler Steen's a better pass blocker than he is a run blocker. I don't agree with that either. So it's simply denial at this point because we have seen them all of a sudden shift into run mode. We've seen Lane Johnson with the let's keep doing this, let's keep running the football, because they know they can have success. And if they're looking to bleed the clock, if they're looking to control the clock, if they're looking to make sure that they do not have Patrick Mahomes on the field, they can do that by running the football. So when we're looking in the wheel of logic, what makes the most sense right now, it's hopefully not just the decision to not run the football. It's the very tangible thing of, oh, this player is not there on the Eagles' offensive line. That's why they're getting away from it. That's why they're abandoning it.
I would say, most of the time, teams play cover 2 because it's a safe coverage for them against it's really safe against the pass, because you can keep everything in front of you. You got 2 high safeties that can cover and prevent teams from going deep. But when you go 2 high safety, that means that you're 6 on 6 in the box when you include the tight end. So most offenses, what they do is the minute that they see 2 high safeties, they check right now. They check right now, and they check to the run. The Eagles are one of the few teams that don't do that. If they've got a pass play on, come hell or high water, they're going to throw the ball. They're very rarely going to check to a run. So it's little things like that when I'm watching the game and I'm seeing, okay, it's almost like the opposite happens. You got 2 high safety, you should be running because you got man on blocking in the box, and you're trying to throw it. When they crowd the line of scrimmage down in the red zone, you bring everybody in tight and you try to run it, and they've got everybody in the box to keep you from running the football. Why not spread out and throw the ball when you're down in the red zone, or use it against use the opposite philosophy of how you should run your offense against a defense. If you want to load the box, guess what? We're going to go max protect. That means we got one-on-ones on the outside. If you're going to play 2 high safety, guess what? We're going to check at the line of scrimmage, and we're going to run the ball right down your throat. We got man on blocking. We can double team, come up to the second level. Why not?
Fair enough. Bill, real quick, before we get to break, I want to ask you that same question that Seth just asked. Why is it they don't run the ball? Overall philosophy or lack of manpower on the offensive line?
I think you're right. I think we're looking for answers here because I went back and looked. We talked about this before. They don't give the running backs a lot of carries in the first half since Jurgens went out. You look at the last few games, they're just not giving them an opportunity to get into any sort of rhythm, and I don't understand it. And the big one for us was the Jets game. We looked at that and said, Jets can't defend against the run, but they're really good against the pass. And what they do, they didn't give the running backs any damn carries. So I don't know. I think we're grasping for things here, but let's hope it happens tonight.
The Eagles just hate the run. I mean, let's just talk about it. The Eagles hate the run. All right, we're going to talk more, of course, about this Eagles-Chiefs matchup. Of course, the rematch of Super Bowl 57, but more importantly, as far as I'm concerned, the preview of Super Bowl 58. We have a great partnership as well here at JAKIB Media when we talk about our partnership with the EBOD Foundation. We're very proud to have this great alliance right now, because as we combat Alzheimer's and dementia, we like to team up here at JAKIB Media and the EBOD Foundation as well.